Good evening, councillors and members of the public in the gallery. May ordinary meeting is to be live streamed via Zoom webinar facilities, and the link is on the council's website. Recordings of council meetings or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or transmitted without the prior written consent of the General Manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory statements. The council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Darug people, and respects the history and culture of the elders, both past and present. Pastor Joe, would you care to provide a prayer at the start of the meeting?
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much. Thank you for all the goodness that we enjoy here in this community. We thank you for the beauty that surrounds us. We thank you for the prosperity that surrounds us. And Father, we thank you for this evening, for each and every one of our councillors and our mayor this evening, that you will guide and direct us and give us your wisdom in our deliberations. And Father, we thank you for your ongoing provision and protection and blessing over this community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. There is one late change to the attendance, and Councillor McKibben is heading back for home because he had close contact with COVID, and he will join via Zoom at the first opportunity. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Graham.
Mr. Mayor, I have an opportunity interest in 1303. Do I need to tell you why?
Yes, if you wish.
That person putting it in is my sister, and she's on my list of people that I should notify about it.
Okay, that's fine. You just when we come to that item, just excuse yourself, and we will invite you back at the appropriate time. Any more? No? Are there no presentations? The public gallery is open to members of the community in accordance with the requirements under current public health orders. Any questions from the public will be able to be asked in person. The community is to be given an opportunity to ask questions at the commencement of each council meeting, and the mayor is to ask for questions from the gallery prior to the commencement of the ordinary meeting. Members of the public wishing to address council are permitted to do so, provided the following guidelines are adhered to. The person asking a question at the council meeting must clearly state their name and in what capacity they are acting. The person asking the questions is acting for another person or organisation as another person or organisation's agent. They must advise council if they have their prior consent or authority. Questions from the public is not an opportunity for debate with elected representatives or staff. It is an opportunity for the community to ask a question in relation to an issue or to put a point of view relating to an issue that may be causing interest or concern. Due to time constraints, the time frame of 3 minutes per speaker is allocated. All questions and comments must be directed through the mayor, and in the instance of a question, if it cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and a response given within a reasonable period of time. This is the only opportunity for a community member to address council during an ordinary meeting. Pastor Joe, I understand you want to speak briefly.
Yes, please. Thank you. Right. So my name is Joanne Corman, and I am the pastor of Oberon Christian Life Centre. And so I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the combined Christian churches of Oberon and Oberon regions. And I have contacted the leaders of each of those churches and do have their permission to speak on their behalf. So thank you, Mayor and councillors and staff for letting me speak and for allowing your time and your attention. Okay. I hope you don't mind if I read my notes. Okay. I'd like to speak to the matter of retaining prayer in the council meetings, if I may. I understand that not all of you believe in the power of prayer, and I respect your position on that. But I want to respectfully remind you that you're here to represent the community. And so that's why I'm coming on behalf of members of the community. Worst case scenario for those who don't believe in the power of prayer is that you think we just wasted 2 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Right? But for those of us who do believe in the power of prayer, we do not want God's hand of blessing and protection and provision to be pushed away from this wonderful community and that we've enjoyed in the past. May I remind you this evening that there is a percentage of this community who do attend church and who do uphold Christian faith, and many more who don't attend church but still believe in the importance and the power of prayer. There is a reasonable expectation from this percentage of the community that prayer in our council meetings would be retained. So I speak on behalf of the combined churches of Oberon and the surrounding region. So that is all the members and community of the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Uniting Church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Christian Life Centre, of which I'm the pastor, and all the Christian communities who meet outside of these established churches. In addition to this, we teach over 150 students Christian SRE in our local public schools, and that is at their parents' request. So this says to me that parents of all these students in our community hold Christian values and therefore hold prayer as a high value. And that's in addition to the families of St. Joseph's School, which of course is a Christian school. So that's a lot of families in our community that hold prayer as a high value. So I ask that you would please remember all these people whom you represent when you're making your deliberations. As Christians, we've been commanded to pray for those in authority over us, and we do. We often do. So we pray for all of you and your important work, and we will continue to do so. So I thank you for your time this evening, and thank you for remembering all the people that you represent in your deliberations. Thanks so much.
All right. Any further questions? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to confirmation of minutes. And we're looking at the minutes from the ordinary meeting of the 19th of April 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes? Councillor Hayden? Councillor Trembath? Councillor Hayden?
Yes, the minutes are all there in order.
Councillor Trembath?
Exactly that, nothing further to add.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Looking now at the Works Committee of the 26th of April 2022, and the resolution is that the minutes of the Works Committee meeting held on the 26th of April 2022 be confirmed and endorse the resolutions made at the meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hayden? Councillor Trembath? Councillor Hayden?
Yes, I'm happy to move the minutes of the meeting that we all attended at the Works Committee.
Councillor Trembath?
I'm happy to second those minutes.
Okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. And now the Finance Committee meeting of the 2nd of May 2022. The minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on the 2nd of May 2022 be confirmed and endorse the resolutions made at that meeting. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Tucker. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This, as far as I can see, the inaccurate record of the meeting. Happy to move to confirm.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Move on to item number 9.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask that the volume be turned up? I'm having considerable difficulties hearing the meeting, and I'm on maximum here.
Okay. How's that? How's that, Councillor McKibben?
That's a little better.
All right, I'll try to speak up, and everyone else, can you please attempt to speak up a bit more so Councillor McKibben can hear us. All right, the mayoral minute. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hayden?
Yes, happy to second the report, and I was just wondering, I've got a couple of questions. Who are the representatives on the Reef Recreation Crown Trust?
That was Caroline Armstrong, was it? Yeah. There was a couple of others whom I don't recall at the moment. I actually spoke to her yesterday in the IGA, and it looks like it's going to be satisfactorily resolved.
Yeah.
They've had the surveyors out there, and it looks like Crown Lands is simply going to do a boundary adjustment, and that will resolve the issue for everyone.
Okay, very good. I'm happy to second minutes.
Councillor McKibben?
No, he's talking about volume.
Sorry, I'm saying I can't hear.
Okay.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, I can hear that.
Any other comments, questions? All right, if there are no more comments or questions, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. At this point, I would like to bring forward item 1410, which is the QBA quarterly budget review statement. We'll bring it forward, noting it's the last item on our agenda, and the person who will be addressing this item is, we probably need to give her an opportunity to leave earlier than anticipated. So, either mover and seconder to bring 1410 forward. Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Watt. Councillor McCarthy, all those in favour? Motion's carried. All right, item 1410. The quarterly budget review statement for January to March 2022. The recommendation is that the report item 1410 is received as information. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move that, that we have this statement.
Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with it. Yeah, anyway, look, check with the one of the other directors on some information. Yeah, and I think
You're happy? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No problem with the report. Just a question relating to page 130, the dot point in the middle of the page relating to road maintenance budget being exhausted. And I've got no criticism or complaint about that. I'm not at all surprised. It's quite normal for that to happen when we've had such a wet year. I'm just interested to know whether that exhaustion of the budget is that the case in all categories of roads, so regional, local sealed, local unsealed, and town streets, or is it just the sum total that's exhausted? How does that work?
Yes, the sum of the total has been exhausted. Some categories fell under, some categories fell over, and we're just mindful that as a whole, they have been exhausted. And
I'm curious to know whether we still have such a thing these days as a road maintenance reserve. What happened in the past was that in drier years, when there was any money left over, it would go into a road maintenance reserve for exactly this situation. So I'm wondering if there's any money there that we could call on to cover the remaining month or so.
Through the Mayor, that has not been the case, unfortunately. There is no reserve of that nature. We are looking at the reserves that we have that can be used to assist.
Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, the bottom of page 131, which notes that our operating performance ratio has dropped below zero, primarily due to the use of contractors for capital projects, and uncertainty about operational grants and revenue into the future. Is it anticipated that we will continue to be below zero for some time if that's the case?
Through the Chair, it is anticipated that due to the inability to recognise revenue this year, we will drop below zero. It is a timing thing, so it is anticipated that it will not continue, but we do monitor it as we look at statements.
Thank you.
Any more? Okay, I'll put the motion that the report be received as information. All those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Now, item 10.01, notice of motion. Transfer of funds for stone walls to house living treasures at the common. The motion is that Oberon Council transfer funds from the waste fund, that brackets mainly scrap metal income, to fund the stone walls at the common that will become the living treasures display wall for the 40 designs. And 1, Oberon Council proceeds with installing the walls in the 22-23 year. Council staff install footings, engage a bricklayer to do the wall behind the living treasures panels, and engage a stonemason to do ends and caps on top of the block work. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McKechnie. Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, why I put this notice of motion is I thought we dealt with this in February, the 15th of February, and it was unanimous from the council. I submitted the same sort of very similar thing without any dot points. It was modified by McKibben and Tucker, and it was to go in the 2022-2023 operational plan. So when the general manager told us at one of those meetings it wasn't in, I seen red. So I've resubmitted to make sure it does get done. It's been going on for a long time, and we're either going to do this or we don't do it. And council at the day decided that the wall that they wanted was similar to the Throsby wall at Black Springs. So in other words, all the panels go along both sides. And thought we could find a site when we have the next common working party, but we're 6 months in and we haven't had a common working party at this council. But anyway, that's the way I feel. Are you going to do this, get that income, or we just forget these living treasures? These are the people that made Oberon great. Thank you.
Councillor McKechnie.
Yes, I'd second it mainly for discussion purposes, but I do support that we should get on and get it done as quickly as possible.
Any other councillors? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very similar comments to what I made when this came up back in February. I do support the project. My concern with the way it's currently worded is where the money is coming from. That if it comes from the waste fund, then we're simply creating a hole in the waste fund that will need to find some other funds to cover that somehow. So noting the GM's comment that the project will be included in the TI projects for 22-23, I personally feel that is a better place to get the funds to complete this project. It is within the town area. It's a capital project. It will beautify the town. I'm not sure if I should move a foreshadowed motion just to change it, that the funding would come from TI Fund 22-23 instead of the waste fund, or what the best way to work it is. But that's my feeling, that I support the project going ahead, but not that source of funding.
Okay. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I support Councillor McCarthy's motion, and to refer back to the February meeting when an amendment was put, and it states in here that appropriate funding stream would be identified. So I would support Councillor Tucker's recommendation of using the TI fund being in the park, in the common, and being in the town precincts for that funding to be used and allocated.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayden. Anyone else? Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a bit confused because I know that this motion was put through in February, so I had assumed that this project was coming up in 2022-23 and that a funding source would be found. I don't recall, and maybe the general manager said that it hadn't been included in the operational plan. If it hasn't, it obviously should. And the funding source will have to be identified if it's not the TI fund. Maybe I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, ask the general manager, what is the situation?
Thank you, Councillor Kevin. That was my next question.
But so through the mayor, as my general manager notes, the inclusion of this was done, and council will recall that I made the comment that any town improvement project would need to be endorsed by council. Through the consultation period, I indicated that a number of projects had been already earmarked. For purposes of trying to make that notification concise, we put an allocation in those dot points for the common. We're expecting to utilise those provisions to include in this case. If council wants it as an individual project outside any further works that you do as part of the common project, then they can include that wall project outside that. But as identified in this, we will implement or include the stone wall project as a item in the town improvement projects for council to deliberate at the June meeting, as I indicated when we first looked at the TI projects in April.
Okay, so we need to put this motion. Let's see what
So-
happens. Councillor Kevin?
So just for clarification, so currently I can't recall what the amount is that is likely to be allocated from the TI fund of the common. Is it 100,000?
It's close to 100,000, yeah. It was 91,000.
And I can't remember what the quote is for this wall, or if we know what it is.
Originally,
until we see what other projects are in the TI fund, we probably don't know if it's appropriate that it has to have a separate line item or whether it can be included within the current TI fund allocated to the common. Can we?
Through the chair, this notice of motion creates a funding source for the project to be completed. The indication that I made was that this would be considered through a TI fund. Should council want to use monies that have been generated through the waste fund, through the scrap metal, they can make this recommendation now to utilise that, and we will include that as part of our operational plan deliberations for June. If council wants it to be considered as a TI project, it needs to be considered as a TI project. Council staff is included as a TI project as one of its roles. This motion seeks to have it sourced from the scrap metal fund, and that's what the motion is. Or through the waste fund, sorry.
Yeah. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just carrying on from that, just if the GM could advise, if my understanding is correct from what I recall from the February meeting, that if the money was to come from the waste fund, that income currently supports our waste services, and if that was taken off to use for this project, we would have to find some other way to make up the balance in the waste fund. Is that generally correct?
Through the chair, generally that is the case. Council has earmarked over the years funds to be protected to, in fact, continue those operations. The money that is collected from the sale of scrap goes back into the waste fund by virtue of that's how it was generated. There is a provision that would allow, subject to council approval, for that money to be removed for another purpose. But you're right. If you use it now, you can't use it for something else. But equally, if you go down the path of the TI allocation, if you use it for that, you're not using it for something else. So it will be a council decision to make. Both provisions have been met. It's a matter of whether council want to consider it as a allocation of funds from the collection of scrap metal, or whether they want to deal with it in June as a town improvement project. It will be at the discretion of council to make that decision.
Councillor Graham.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question? How much is in the waste fund?
Through the chair, there is a significant amount of money in the waste fund, but in recognition of we're going through a potential tip closure and a tip opening, there is significant amounts of money that will come in and out. Council staff and through different budgets have been allocating money to that fund in order to prepare for that closure and opening of the new tip.
About $1,600,000.
There's some money in the. However, this is a section of how we generate income for that fund. So the fund is being generated over a period of years. The current notice of motion seeks to utilise the profits made from the sale of scrap metal to use it as part of the construction project for this. So they're slightly different things. Although they report to the same restricted fund, they are slightly different in the way that they've been collected. Is there any allocation off the top of your hand around
In the waste fund?
Can I seek an amendment to the
I'm
original
just coming to
motion?
you, I'm letting these two stop talking.
Sorry.
Councillor Hayden.
I'd like to seek an amendment to the motion that we reword this and omit scrap metal income to town improvement fund, considering it is a town improvement, and the scrap metal fund and the income there is going to be needed for our tip and for further.
We don't have to.
All right, is there a mover and a seconder for that amendment? That Oberon Council transfer funds from the TI fund to fund the stone walls at the common, and that will become a living treasures display. Councillor Tucker.
Can I make it slide?
Well, let me get on with this. Councillor Tucker, we've got a seconder.
Yes, providing it's a legitimate.
Well,
motion.
it hasn't, all it's changed is where the funding is coming from. So
Yes, which is what
it
I
is not a
proposed.
fundamental change to the motion. Well, I don't judge it to be a fundamental change.
Yeah, and provided we can decide to allocate money from the TI fund now rather than waiting until June. That was the point.
Through the chair, that's the problem. You don't have the money in TI to allocate to this. All I would suggest, instead of transferring that money, you allocate a project in TI, which will include this development. So you can't transfer the money in TI has been fully.
That's what I was trying to do in the
Yeah.
first place, but I
Yes.
didn't know if we're jumping the gun to do that now.
All right. So you would like that to say something like the Oberon Council
Utilise
utilise the TI fund to fund the.
Yes, or allocate funds from the TI fund 22-23 to fund blah, 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 blah.
All right. Let's just get that right. Council allocate funds from the 2022-23 TI fund to fund the stone walls, etc.
Yes.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Hayden? Any other comments?
If you read the CSP, isn't the TI fund oversubscribed by well in excess of 500,000? Because you've got the hub down the bottom, haven't you? And you've got 100,000 for the common. Then you've got other projects that you're going to do.
Yeah.
So you've only got 500,000 allocated. So one line alone is the hub. So therefore, this project's not going to go ahead.
All right.
So through the chair, through our consultation, we provided for a number of projects that could be used for the TI fund. The reason that 500,000 for the hub was put in there was based on council's direction to staff to try and look at ways to remove the need to loan the delta for the hub. All that was in there is that this was a potential process or a potential option for council to utilise should they see fit. Yes, under that scheme, the TI fund is oversubscribed, and it will be up to council in June to make sure that it doesn't get oversubscribed. So the only reason that was there was to indicate to council that that could be an option that they use on the basis that they have used it before. Right? Whether council think that's a good idea or not will be purely up to council to make that decision in June. So I can't stress that enough. A requirement of your deliberations in June is to keep the town improvement project, should you resolve to in fact collect town improvement within that fund, within that level of money that's been allocated.
Councillor McKechnie?
I'm not sure if this is the right place to raise the issue, but could I ask how much the bulky goods collection is budgeted to spend on that? Bear with me, there is some relevant to the question.
Yeah. Through the mayor, yeah. So just looking at the TI, so there's 2021 there was 26k for bulky goods. We adopted another 8k in there last year, so sitting about 34k for bulky goods work and stuff like that under TI.
Yeah, I thought it may have been more, but my question was going to be, that's not really town improvement, that's just emptying out people's garages and back sheds. Whereas this is town improvement. I was thinking maybe we could take that out of the waste fund, because that's what it is, it's collecting people's garbage. It's not beautifying the town because it's stuff they've got hidden in their backyards.
Full front yards.
Well,
But you're right.
the council should have a different way of dealing with that. But anyway, if there's not 100 grand there, the budgeted for it, there's not enough. But I'll be opposing that when it does come around to TI.
Councillor Tucker?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, if this amendment passes, that we use the TI fund 22-23, and let's say we're talking 100,000, for example, then in June, I assume we would be deciding how to allocate the remaining 409,000 instead of the full 509,000.
Through the chair, there'll be, if council resolve tonight to consider this project as part of the TI fund, it will simply go in the suite of dot points that we have with a note saying this is a council endorsed project that they'd like to see. Once again, council will need to make the decision on whether they want to collect TI for this year. If so, the projects that they want to see delivered in that. If council make the decision to have a TI allocation for 22-23, and this project is endorsed to do that, that's what it is. Right? I would also expect if council resolved that they didn't want to do this, they didn't want to collect the TI fund, this project, because of the significance of it, would need to find its way into our operational plan in some form or another, and that could be through the sale of scrap metal from the waste fund.
So the wording currently says that we allocate money. What I think the GM's saying is that we list it for allocation in June.
That's through the chair. I don't want to put words in council's mouth when they haven't made the decision on utilising TI.
But if we read what the wording of our amendment says, it was the council allocate funds from TI 22-23.
Yes.
And if we decide then it's allocated and we would then be obliged to collect the TI fund. I think what the GM is saying is that the effect of passing this amendment would be that the sculptures project, the Living Treasures project, would be effectively the top priority when it comes to this item in June, given that we'd already expressed our support and wanted to go ahead if we collect the TI fund.
Through the chair, that is the next priority on your list of priorities under the common fund.
Councillor Carter?
I'll just say something in case I missed the right or reply. The reason why I identified this money that comes in the waste fund is when we sell the scrap metal, you get a bonus in one part of the year. It's not one part of the year. Sometimes it might come in for 18 months. So in this case, I think it was in February, we got a six-figure sum in excess of that six-figure base sum from scrap metal. We could go around in a circle. It's identified that can do it. Normally, we only have a four-figure sum monthly at the tip as revenue income. This is something the community takes out there, the scrap metal, and they see it can be utilised as a town project. There is not a major cost to it. It's just pushed up normally with the compactor. There's not a great deal of cost incurred in it. Not like the green waste where you take the green waste, then you get someone in at $80 or $160 an hour to chop up your green waste with a bit of concrete. It costs us a fortune. This is money that people in the town get behind. They know it's going to be recycled. So why not use it on a project that's identified? But anyway, if we keep going around the circle,
All right.
Thank you for your-
I'll put the amendment.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens. All right, councillors, I'll put the amendment. This is Oberon Council allocate funds from the TI fund to fund the stone walls at the common that will become the Living Treasures display for the display wall for the 40 designs.
Consider, rather than allocate.
Consider. All right. I can't be better on there. All right. Is that what you're happy with that, Councillor Hayden?
Just need the word allocating after consider. That can Oberon Council consider allocating funds from?
Yeah. Mover and seconder happy with that?
Yeah.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? The amendment is lost. The original motion now stands. And I'll put the original motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against?
Andrew, 7.
And Andrew?
Andrew had his hand up.
Hold your hand up.
Right. And the motion is carried at 7-2. With Councillor Tucker and Councillor Hayden voting against. All right. Thank you, councillors. Let's move on to 10.02 was a notice of motion, but that has been disallowed by the General Manager. Committee reports. Item 12.01, the Black Springs Community Hall Committee meeting. And the recommendation is the council receive reports 12.01 as information. So, in a second, Councillor Hayden and Councillor Turnbull. Councillor Hayden.
Yeah, I'm happy to move this motion. We had a couple of good meetings, and the latest meeting, working in with the Community Association at Black Springs to get some issues resolved and an MOU operating, and it's good to see that the power and everything's getting repaired at the hall, and the report speaks for itself there.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second that.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is passed unanimously. Move on to item 1301, which is the Oberon Street Tree Master Plan, final adoption. The recommendation is that council note the submission received and adopt the final version of the Oberon Street Tree Master Plan that was recently exhibited from the 18th of March to the 29th of April 2022. Mover and seconder, Councillor McKibben, Councillor Graham. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, this is something I've been quite passionate about in moving forward to beautify our town, and I think it's had overwhelming support from the people in the town and in the whole Shire, and I would commend it, and I think it's a great step forward that we have a plan for the future, which has looked at our streets to enhance the beauty, provide more shade for everyone, for parking under, and to enhance our position in the tourist market around the state and country. So I'm very happy to propose this, to move this recommendation.
Is this not the one we had a declaration of interest in?
No.
No.
Sorry? Well, I marked it down wrong.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I
Sorry.
certainly support the master plan. I think it's really going to improve the look of the town, and I think it's second it.
Okay. Any other councillors?
I'm happy with the report, but one of the dot points down the bottom shouldn't have included some of the rural estates like King's Estate and stuff like that, Titania Estate. So it just has taken into account the following streets. So shouldn't it really take into account Titania, King's Estate? Was it just restricted to the town, the village?
That's our stage two. Yeah.
Okay,
That wasn't in the scope apparently.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion's passed unanimously. Item 1302, development application at 10/2021 86.1, 8 lot subdivision at 81 Albion Street, Oberon. The recommendation is that council approve development application 10/2021.86.1 for an 8 lot subdivision for residential purposes at lot 4 in DP 1112869, being known as 81 Albion Street, Oberon, in accordance with section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, and conditions contained within this report for the following reasons. The development is permissible within the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. The development complies with the Oberon Local Environment Plan of 2013. The development is considered to be appropriate and will not impact the locality unreasonably, and the division be called in accordance with section 375A of the Local Government Act of 1993. We'll have a mover and a second, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Prenbath. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move this recommendation. I have a couple of concerns, although with access points, but as this has already been given permission through the Land and Environment Court, I feel that the recommendation with the other considered element will exist.
Councillor Prenbath.
I second it. I did have a couple of reservations around some of the access, but I've had those questions answered. I'm happy to see that we have got more housing becoming available potentially in town, which we desperately need.
Councillor McCarthy?
I'm happy with the report, but I was just going to ask with the, to mover and second to have a fourth dot point that council get the report from the traffic, from RMS. That's my concern, that we need that report. I don't want to hold the development up, but this has got to go off for them to get the report done. RMS has got to be consulted on this.
I'm through the chair, Councillor McCarthy, we spoke to Transport for New South Wales and they stated that as the road, there were two types of roads, classified and non-classified, and they indicated it was a non-classified road. They advised that any number with, it's a 7,000 number is a non-classified road, and Albion Street is 7,510, so it wasn't required to be referred to Transport for New South Wales. That's your advice for this week.
Okay, 3 minutes to me. Would there be any chance of having that put on file that we did contact the RMS and they have no requirements?
Yes.
Because if you have a look at the one further on it,
That's what we were reason.
at that time that they did, and they made all the intersections be boxed up to one. And
Can you note that in the minutes, please, Mr. Spinell, that the RMS advice on this particular DA be noted in the file?
and the other one was,
Sort of the chair, it's already in the report. We didn't get to probably 6.
okay.
No, okay. Got one.
And in page 31, if I may, how high is the acoustic wall to be between the industrial side and the, what's saying, it's my fault I didn't go through it enough, but yeah. Is there a perceived height that it's got to be?
Through the chair, there's not been a height determined.
What I'm getting at is that the owner of the industrial block next door made a point of putting in a submission, but what he was concerned about, that when it becomes a block, and he knows it's going to be a residential block, originally it was to be a light industrial block, like a nursery, but and it was a 4-lot subdivision. But what he's saying is that he has a refrigeration vehicle, a semi-trailer that's plugged into electricity sometimes on weekends. So goodness, the height of the wall's got to be, say, 1,800 mil high or whatever. I don't know. But it needs to be determined.
The chair proposed condition 18 outlines the need for a acoustic.
Yeah, I realise that.
You're right, it doesn't say what height that is, and I would suspect that the applicant will need to demonstrate that the acoustic wall does meet the requirements of doing exactly that.
Okay.
Councillor McKibben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support it. Support the development, and I note the comments about the acoustic wall, and also that any development application for building or for construction certificates be linked to having thick 6.3 millimetre thick grass on any windows facing the industrial area. My concern is somewhat a little bit like Councillor McCarthy, in that we've all seen the experience where everything seems fine. Everyone knows there's an airport. Someone builds a house under the airport, and the next thing they're complaining about the noise from the aeroplanes. We certainly don't want that type of situation to occur here. So I think we need to, and I'm sure our planning department has made sure that that situation is not likely to occur in the future, and that we have made all consents on the basis that there is an industrial area next door, and that they have to have the ability to continue doing their operations and whatever else is anticipated under the particular zoning of that area. So I'm happy if the Director of Planning, through you, Mr. Mayor, can give us those assurances.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor McKibben. Condition number 23, or proposed condition number 23, description of title, the first dot point there relates to the requirements for the glazing and also meeting acoustic requirements during the nighttime period for the windows in bedrooms facing up in street.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that's considered sufficient enough? I did read that, but is that considered enough? And again, the points that Councillor McCarthy made about the height of the acoustic wall, do you know what it is, how high it's anticipated to be to cope with that refrigerated truck, etc.?
Through the chair, as the general manager mentioned, it would be something that the applicant would need to identify back to council compliance with perhaps the acoustic consultant's measures and report. And in terms of the restriction, I believe that it does satisfy the requirements for the noise. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just clarification, it says acoustic fence, not wall. So I've never heard one. So Damien might be able to tell us what they're made up of.
Through the chair, from my experience, there can be constructed of materials, obviously, that would is capable of withstanding the weather, and it may just be like a billboard type material with some insulation inside that can be outside, goes up to a certain height, just to stop the noise transferring from site to site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, councillors? I'll put the motion. And the recommendation that council approve development application 1021.86.1 for an 8-lot subdivision for residential purposes at lot 4 in DP 112869, being known as 81 Albion Street, Oberon, in accordance with section 416 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979 and conditions contained within this report for the following reasons. The development is permissible within the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. The development complies with the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. The development is considered to be appropriate and will not impact the locality unreasonably. The division is to be called in accordance with sections 375A of the Local Government Act 1993. All those in favour? The motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. Page 3, item 1303. Councillor Graham is leaving the room. All right. Look, 1303. Development application 10/2022 9.1. Dwelling and consolidation of lots at 924 Duckmalloy Road, Duckmalloy. The recommendation is that council approve development application 10/2022.9.1 for dwelling and a consolidation of lots at lot 3 in DP 1049069. Lots 139 and 174 in DP 757050 and lot 681 in DP 730096, known as 924 Duckmalloy Road, Duckmalloy. In accordance with section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979 and the conditions contained within this report for the following reasons. The development is permissible within the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. The development is considered satisfactory despite non-compliance with clause 4.2b of the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013, and the development is considered to be appropriate and will not impact the locality unreasonably. A division is to be called in accordance with section 375A of the Local Government Act of 1993. I have a mover and second, please. Councillor Hayden and Councillor Tucker. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move this recommendation. I have noticed that it is 1.5 hectares under our 1 hectare zoned lot size. couple of other key issues there. One of them being the dwelling, 600 metre square roof area could be divided into two, but that is not something that we're looking at it currently. And I'm happy to move this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Packer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I've read through the report and have no problem with the development, and noting that the non-compliance is, in my opinion, minor. I'm so happy to second.
Councillors, any comments, observations, questions? Councillor McCarthy.
Just a clarification, the lot that's there and it's going to be developed, does it hit the Duck Malloy Road? See in the thing there it says right of carriageway? Can they actually travel to the Duck Malloy Road to get access if they needed to be?
Through the chair, page 35 indicates that the access location is via an existing recessed gate from Duckmoy Road. So I'd say yes is the answer to that.
I'm asking, it says there that the access of Duckmoy Road is a right of carriageway. See the line, the double line that comes along there, and then it's got the dog leg in it? Yeah. Okay.
I'll move in.
Yeah, no, my only concern was that we're saying consolidation of the lots. And sometimes when you have consolidation of lots, the new consolidated lot doesn't have the right to go that right of carriageway.
So through the chair, I note what the councillor is trying to say, and as part of this consent, that would need to be formalised as part of the consolidation.
Thank you.
I get what you're.
Anyone else? Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, I'll put the motion. If you forgive me, I'll just say, I'll put the recommendation rather than read it out again. All in favour?
No, we want it.
That motion is passed unanimously. And can you invite Councillor Graham back in, please? Right. Welcome back, Councillor Graham.
Thank you.
Council item 1304, development application 10/2022.12.1, two-lot subdivision, dwelling and carport at 4 Blythe Street, Oberon. Recommendation is that council approve development application 10/2022.12.1 for a two-lot subdivision for residential purposes at Lot 3, Section 54 in DP 758805, being known as 4 Blythe Street, Oberon. In accordance with Section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979 and conditions contained within this report for the following reasons. Development is permissible within the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. Development is considered satisfactory despite non-compliance with the minimum lot size standard in the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013, and the development is considered to be appropriate and will not impact the locality unreasonably. Provisions to be called in accordance with Section 375A of the Local Government Act of 1993. I'll move in a second, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I've had a good look at this. I'm quite familiar with the location and the block. I'm happy to move the recommendation, even though it is slightly undersized, but we have to look at the impact that needing more housing in the community. So I'm just happy to move that.
Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm happy with the development. On page 55, I'm a bit bewildered by the public submissions, and I'm glad to see that our rock wall out the front isn't going to be impacted. So,
Anyone else? Councillor Tucker.
Just one question that I've only just noticed now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Just on page 52, paragraph 3, permissibility, and it talks about one of the proposed lots is less than the minimum lot size of 2 hectares. Is that an error?
That's 800 square metres.
Right, thank you.
Well spotted.
see.
All right. Not on my first reading. I think.
Anyone else, councillors? All right, I'll put the recommendation. All of those in favour? The motion is passed unanimously. Item 1305. Planned hire panel 2022-23 financial year, T 2022/3. Recommendation that the 24 tendered and compliant submissions be adopted as the preferred pre-assessed contractor panel for the 2022-2023 financial year. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor McKechnie. Oh, you just swatted something. Councillor Hayden.
I'm against it.
Councillor Hayden, seconder.
And
Councillor McKibben. Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation, and it's very thorough, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Yes, I'm happy to second it. I suppose one of the things we need to assess is, and I don't know how we do this in a year, we obviously do this planned hire panel tender quite regularly, and we have a number of parties on it. And they've all gone through the assessment criteria on page 73. And I note that they're only on a needs basis. How in these situations, if I could through you, Mr. Mayor, and I am seconding the recommendation, ensure that there is at least some equitable distribution of work amongst these companies, most of them obviously resident in the Oberon area. Because although this is a standing offer arrangement, it could very well be that one wet hire and one dry hire company are regularly used without the others being used. I'm just wondering, you know, I'm quite happy to second the recommendation, but I just have this query that when this recommendation is implemented, how do we have some equitable distribution of work, or ensure that it's not all provided to one or two of the panel?
Councillor Strickland.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's a matter of availability, I suppose. You know, in reality, aside from cost and really, it's a compliance list from the perspective of, yes, look, okay, they're all qualified, but again, there is no hard and fast rule, I suppose, about having one over the other. Again, it's a document that's put together for staff to work with, and subject again to availability, you know, in terms of what services required, whether it be a dump truck or a bit of heavy earth moving equipment, or a combination of. So again, there is no sort of real way from that perspective of saying there's a preference of one over the other, and nor should there be. But I don't really have any other answer to that question.
I suppose, Mr. Mayor, all I'm asking is maybe at the end of a period we could have some analysis just to ensure that there is some equitable distribution. I have seen situations before where companies spend some money getting themselves on the panel list with standing offers, and then they don't receive any work whatsoever, even though they end up being on the panel. And because, and I'm not suggesting that happens here, but because Joe Blogg's second cousin happens to be involved with one of the companies, they tend to get the majority of the work. You know, I just want to ensure that we are providing some equitable distribution of work. So I just wonder, through you and through the general manager, you know, how we do that.
Yeah, no, through the mayor, it's like we note the point that's been made by the councillor. The general reason why we have these is so it allows us to comply with our obligations under the Act that meet the tendering thresholds. So it's not necessarily a matter of who we use too often. It's a matter of making sure we don't use that person too often, because there are a set of standards that have been put in place to make sure that if you aren't going to tend to engage these people, you need to make sure that you don't go over a threshold. So whilst I acknowledge the director's points about he can't give you a hard and fast rule, the tendering guidelines are the things that we're trying to minimise, and making sure we don't go over that provision, which is something that the Office of Local Government would be looking at council quite strictly. So that is the rationale behind the tender. I hope that gives you some answer rather than not exactly the full answer that you've asked for, but I agree, having an indication on how much we have used these preferred tenderers would not be a unutilised document.
Yeah, yes. I take your point about the tender. I absolutely understand why we go this way, why we go out, they meet the requirements, and then we can use them. But it's the second point that's obviously my issue. Someone could just pick the same company off the panel all the time. They've gone through the process, they meet the criteria, and the other ones don't get a look in. Even though they've met all their criteria, they've submitted all the stuff for the tender, made sure that they're on the panel. And the other problem this can have in the future is if they don't get an opportunity, next time we come up the panel, they say, well, why should we put ourselves in the panel? We didn't get any work last time anyway. And then you narrow the number of people that end up putting themselves forward.
Through the chair, I'd concur with that statement, but we continue yet quite a number of people who put their names on these tender or through this document process. So I would suspect that is not their understanding, because we continue to get a lot of people who lodge their expression.
All right, thank you, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, but just before I ask them, just to add a little bit to what Councillor McKibben and the General Manager and the Director have said. Certainly in my experience, there was never any conscious effort to spread the work around. There was always a conscious effort to choose the best equipment at the best price for whatever we needed at the time. And if that meant that a lot more work went to one contractor than another, then so be it. That's just a reflection of what they were offering and the prices they were offering. I do acknowledge Councillor McKibben's point about the risks of regularly going to one contractor or one tender over another, and the potential opportunity for someone to have suspicions or make accusations. But I guess that's why we have this process, that at least we have prices set down in writing that apply for the whole year and give some basis for defence. But yes, I do still have some remaining concerns on that issue that Councillor McKibben has raised. My couple of questions. The first one is just on page 73 on the big table, where it says that all submissions have been deemed compliant. And yet within the table, there are two of them, which are Fitzpatrick's and Hayden's, which don't have any ticks against their name. And I'm wondering why that is.
But again,
Yeah, that was an omission where I haven't ticked those boxes.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure, but they should be ticked.
Okay.
They are there.
So
Apologies.
okay, that's fine. My second question is the final paragraph on page 74 prior to the director's note. Just wanting to clarify about the tendering threshold of 250,000. Now, I note that where there are individual projects that are likely to exceed that, we can call separate tenders and we don't use this panel. But over the course of a year where we're regularly using certain contractors, what is our experience in recent years? Are we finding that over a 12-month period that there are any of those contractors that exceed 250,000 just by adding up all the bits and pieces?
Yeah, look, in past history, there has been those times that there has been cumulative work that has exceeded thresholds, not necessarily the 250 threshold, certainly when it was 150. But again, in trying to share that work around, and again, as you have indicated, the best value for money is most often, and along with performance, the way we tend to go and select the required resource and skill sets. So, look, again, it is monitored from a finance point of view where reports are produced about cumulative expenditure, and they are generally produced on I think on a quarterly basis in terms of how that performance is going as an indicator as to the spend with any particular external party.
And just to follow on, but the reason for asking that question is if we don't generally exceed that 250,000 threshold over the course of a year, but under utilising this panel, I just wonder if it might be a matter of changing the terminology to not call it contracts. And the reason I say that is that in the tendering guidelines, the requirement on council when it calls tenders is either to select one tenderer or to select none. The tendering guidelines don't give the opportunity or the option of selecting or accepting multiple tenderers, and that's part of the concern I've had with this arrangement as well. It's section. It's in the local government regulation, section 178. If you want to have a look sometime, but I'm not expecting an answer now. I'm just explaining why I've always had a bit of a concern with this process.
Okay. Noted.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I will put the motion that the 24 tendered and compliance submissions be adopted as a preferred pre-assessed contract panel for the 2022-23 financial year. All in favour? All right, unanimous. Motion is passed. 1306, development application 10/2016/78.1, Community Consultative Committee nomination. The recommendation is that council nominate one councillor delegate, one alternate delegate, and the Planning and Development Director to sit on the Pine Hill Quarry Community Consultative Committee. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy.
I know, we're just replacing Councillor Donny on this position. But what we also need to do is, I don't know where we can include it, but we need that those two councillors to know the consent of the DA. Yeah. So, council delegate and
So you'll.
yeah, there's a council alternative delegate.
So we're actually we're actually finding one council.
Yes, that's correct. But isn't it an alternative delegate as well?
Yeah. Councillor Hayden.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. I've got a few concerns about the wording of this because as it states, it says that council nominate one councillor delegate and an alternative delegate, and that the planning and development director, and then down lower it says council to nominate a new councillor and one council officer in the community consultative committee. I'd just like to see that tidied up a little bit, and then I'm happy with it.
Well, how would you like to cut it up?
Just put down that council nominate one council delegate. Is there more than one?
No,
Currently?
we have one at the moment,
Right.
which is Councillor McKechnie.
Yep.
And we're after the alternate, which is open.
So that's all that the motion is after, is
Yes,
just an
correct.
alternate, right, okay.
Through the chair, councillor McKechnie has indicated he'd like to sit on the panel.
I'm, you know,
You're nominated.
I'm nominated to replace councillor Dane.
Okay.
We had one representative and the director of the previous committee.
Yep.
And we need to replace the councillor that's no longer a councillor.
Yep.
And I'm nominating to
The other thing,
fill that vacancy.
we need to do is, this slipped through the cracks back in December when we allocated committees for some reason, and we need to get that realigned with all the other jobs. So it'll be a re-nominated in 2 years and 3 months. All right, any other councillors?
Yes, I support the delegates that are on there. But there's been a bit of argy-bargy from reporting from management. The people that are on the panel, whoever they be, should be given the current consent. In other words, what Damien gave me tonight was, it says there that they only operate Monday to Friday. We've been told that other times they can operate Saturday. And I remember specifically that it was eliminated Saturday. I brought it to your attention that they're operating Saturday, but because no one's complained out there, I thought just let dogs ride. But I remember when Lynn Prowse was here and we talked about the quarry, and all Lynn Prowse says, consider us, we live there. She didn't go for up on the quarry, she just said, consider us. And as a part of it, you need to have the consent so you can reference it if someone asks you a question as a consultant, as the representative. So at the present, I think it stands that it's only Monday to Friday. And after today, I've just seen a massive great bulldozer heading out there on Lowesmount Road, and there's a screen out there as well. So looks like they're going to really hop into extracting some material. But I'm bewildered to think there's never been a report back to council on the road levy in all the time that the quarry's been actioned. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Packer?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Do we need to include the nominated councillors' names in the resolution?
So through the chair, the way these things would normally be undertaken by council is you move the motion to end of the debate. You nominate who you want to be as the delegate and the alternate. You amend that motion to correct that, and you move on.
So we're after an amendment to include the names.
That's right. That is purely what you'll be doing. So these types of reports, council staff can't just say, well, you're doing it. So we give, that's the way that we enter the document into the proceedings. Once generally one will put their hand up and another one will put their hand up, we'll put an alternate recommendation up. You'll endorse the alternate recommendation and that'll progress as it flows.
Are we at that point now? Can I move an amendment? Is that, have I got it right?
Well, let's see if there's anyone else at the moment. We've got one Councillor McKechnie's nominated for the alternate.
Doesn't it say that council nominate a person? So
Well,
we would like to nominate a person.
Oh, yeah, maybe that person doesn't want to be nominated though.
So through the chair, you need to nominate a representative to be the nominated person. And we've indicated that An alternate is always good to have. If that person cannot make the meeting, they can send the alternate.
Can I nominate a person?
So councillor McKechnie is nominated as the rep. If you want to nominate a person to.
I thought it was up to council to
It will be,
nominate both parties.
That's right.
But it's going to be a volunteer. It's not going to be a.
Yeah, well,
press person.
they can either say yay or nay, but I volunteer councillor Tucker. I nominate councillor Tucker. Sorry, I don't volunteer him.
Let's see. Are you a volunteer, councillor Tucker?
No, I'm not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I know Councillor McCarthy has an interest, and I was going to
And I'm going to ask the volunteers.
Yeah.
All right. Councillor Cullen.
And I'll go the alternate.
No, I'm,
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that, more than happy.
no, I'd rather see you be the what's hang on, I'll be the alternate.
Okay, so you're happy
I
to
only fill
volunteer
in
as the
when he's
alternate,
away.
and councillor McKechnie, you happy to volunteer as a delegate?
Yep.
All right, and the planning director is an automatic one. So I'll make the amendment. Proposed amendment, we nominate councillor McKechnie as the council delegate, and the alternate delegate is councillor McCarthy. And the planning director, along with the planning director, to sit on the Pine Hill Quarry Community Consultative Committee. Do I have a mover and seconder for that amendment? Councillor Tucker, Councillor Trembath. Would to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly what I had in mind, so I'm glad those people have volunteered.
Yes.
And
Councillor
I'm
Trembath.
happy to second that. That goes to.
Anyone else?
I'd just like them to make some reports and be aware of our Indigenous heritage in the area when the processes are underway.
Excellent.
Can I just comment that there's a report on the Indigenous heritage in the original BA?
Yeah.
So, what I'd like to know is who keeps the records of the load out there? Is that the quarry manager?
Technical Services Director?
Actually might be Damien.
Maybe? Planning Director?
Through the chair, that would be the conditions of consent that the applicant would need to comply with when they submit their annual return as well. So the ball's in their court, so to speak.
So this is a self-regulating quarry.
Through the chair, the quarry is licensed under a EPL, under an environmental protection license. There are conditions that would relate to tonnages, volumes in that. There would also be mechanisms for the EPA to seek surveys and the like, should there be any query as to the volumes that are being extracted from that locality. So I'm confident that there was mechanisms in place to make sure that appropriate tonnages are recorded.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's also a provision in here that the money goes towards improving the Lowesmere Road. And you've just seen that it's been improved with the Tablelands Way. But anyway, I'm happy to find out.
Sharon, can you put that amendment up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just in response to Councillor McCarthy's question, condition number 7 within the consent highlights the way that the landowner needs to undertake that process as indicated.
All right, the amendment is up there. And mover and seconder have spoken to it. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? That's unanimous. The amendment now becomes the motion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And the motion is, sorry, the new motion is carried unanimously. Congratulations, Councillor McKechnie and McCarthy, on your new job.
Thank you, Mr.
All right. and their volunteers here. All right, moving on to item 1307, Reconnecting Regional New South Wales Community Events Program, event prioritisation. The recommendation is that council seek applications from community groups to run eligible community events funded by the RRCEP grant allocation. An application form and information sheet will be developed by council, and applications are to be submitted to council by the 30th of May 2022. 2, council nominate events that can be resourced and delivered by council's community services team. 3, council staff assess nominated projects and provide a report for decision to the June 2022 ordinary meeting to prioritise funding allocations for proposed events that meet the RRCEP eligibility criteria detailed in this report. In accordance with the RRCEP guidelines, council, as the eligible applicant, submit one grant application to the CEP, here we are, specifying how the entire allocation of $239,651 or part thereof will be spent, and submit the application by the 24th of June 2022. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Graham, Councillor Watt. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a wonderful opportunity for community events in Oberon. So, yeah, have to recommend it. Go with the recommendation.
Yes,
Councillor Watt.
yes, I could agree with that. It doesn't give us much time, but it's an exciting opportunity. So I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with that. I just have one question that may possibly require a very minor amendment. Just picking up on some comments last week at our briefing session about the workload on council's existing staff and the need to try to find projects that other community organisations are able to organise that meet the criteria. Whereas recommendation 2 simply says nominate events that can be resourced and delivered by council's community services team. Is there any value in adding a few words to that that would say or by community organisations? Is that necessary, or even if they're being delivered by others, does that still fit in with the current word?
I think recommendation 1 covers the community nominations, and recommendation 2 covers the council ones. And the team has been working proactively and have already got the particular application form completed.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments? Okay, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. All right, item 1308, page 79, Village Fund Project Allocation. Recommendation is that council approve the request from the Black Springs Community Association to draw down $16,000 from the Black Springs Village Fund to support the purpose and installation of acoustic panels in the Black Springs Hall. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hayden and Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move this recommendation. Black Springs currently has the power upgrade, the installation of solar panels, and it was recommended that the acoustic boards all be done at the same time to alleviate any issues down the track when the boards have to be installed and after the heaters. So the heating and the power and the boards to be done at the same time makes more sense, and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a result of the grant being obtained by Black Springs Community, obviously the upgrade of the power, as has been said, has been covered by that grant, and this allows for the acoustic panels to be done at the same time. And there would have been some rework if these panels are not done at the same time, because the new heaters would be put up on the old panels, and then when the new panels were replaced, it'd have to be taken down and put back up on the new panels. So that's one of the reasons this issue's been brought forward. And the grant has also allowed this funds to be redirected to this. So I'd fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion with the recommendation that council approve the request from Black Springs Community Association. All those in favour? Motion is passed unanimously. Item 1309, policy 1101, code of meeting practice. The recommendation is that council consider submissions received during the public exhibition of the draft policy 1101, code of meeting practice, and adopt policy 1101, code of meeting practice as presented. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do support adopting the policy as presented and as we had discussed some months ago. Just a couple of brief comments about the submissions that we have received. In relation to Mr. Sullivan's submission about altering the order of business, I am aware that where there is particular interest in any item, the general practice has been to bring that item forward, particularly when there are people in the gallery who want to hear the discussion. And I think that's appropriate, and I'm sure that will continue. He also makes the point about people watching online, and obviously that doesn't give them the opportunity to ask for particular items to be brought forward. But they have the option of not watching it live and watching a recording later and jumping straight to the item that they're interested in. In relation to the removal of the prayer, and I note the written submission and the presentation we received earlier today, and I don't doubt that there are a significant portion of the community who are religious and believe in prayer. I would have thought that not very many of them would think it was appropriate that others who don't believe should be put in a position of having to participate in that. And that's why my original suggestion when I raised this topic a few months ago was that I proposed an alternative where there be an opportunity provided for those who wish to participate in a prayer immediately prior to the meeting. So it might be at 5:25, but not a part of the meeting agenda itself, so that those who don't wish to participate are not obliged to. Thank you.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to second the recommendation. I actually think that considering we've been elected by the community, we have to sometimes overlook personal opinion and understand that the community would like to have the prayer retained within our code of meeting practice, the policy guidelines. I don't believe it to be a huge issue for us councillors, considering the majority of the public that are watching our meetings are of Christian beliefs, and perhaps we need to rethink that and just have the prayer as the pastor and the other religious affiliation would like to delegate between themselves at our meeting.
Councillor Prember.
I'd like to support that we listen to the community as well and acknowledge that we do live in a Christian community. Parliament opened with a prayer and has done since 1901, I believe. And the only change that they made was in 2010 when they also included the acknowledgement of country, which we do. So I would support that we keep prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was quite interested in the presentation this evening. To me, I certainly don't believe in the power of prayer and also don't. I think we can have a broad range of representation at council, which is what we should have. But to me, it is, if there's strong community support for it, and I'm not sure that there is, but if there is, it's a minor inconvenience to me. So it seems that a small number of people feel strongly about it and a large number of people probably don't. so I don't care to offend those people, so I'm happy to retain it as it is.
Councillor McKechnie?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to make a comment on, these are not personal views, but more the views of the people that have approached me in the last few weeks about this. I think I would support keeping the prayer. As Councillor Trembath mentioned, it comes from the Westminster system where all our government practices and statutes follow procedures, and the head of the Westminster, or the head of the English Parliament where the Westminster system comes from, actually is the head of one of the church organisations. It's a custom that I think we should keep. Well, people mentioned to me that we should keep, and the tradition that we should value. So I would support keeping it in.
Anyone else? Councillor McKibben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, I'm not expressing a personal view on this, but there have been a number of comments from the community, as Councillor McKechnie has said, and a number of other councillors have spoken, and I too understand what Councillor Trembath has said, that it is part of our national heritage and it is in our national parliament. I'm quite happy to retain the prayer. I also think that the possibility should be there also to ask, you know, we do have, well, I know we have Hindus and others in the community that on occasions they may be offered to asked to give a introduction prayer or similar. But I do understand, due to Australia's heritage and everything else, that people would have do want to keep the prayer. I can understand that. So I suppose at this stage I would support its retention because it's basically community's view, I would believe. I mean, we could go out and get community opinion more generally on it, but it seems to me that there is a large, well, there's certainly a large segment of the community that would like it retained.
Anyone else? All right, so the recommendation, I think, needs to be amended. And in fact, the code of meeting practice as presented is not what we've come down, well, we appear to have come down to vote on. I assume that most councillors are actually happy to keep the current order of events within the standard organisation of the business papers, and we'll continue to move items forward as need and crowds dictate.
Yeah.
And we'll keep the prayer in the code of meeting practice. So we'll just get an amendment for that.
So through the chair, simply by adopting policy 1102, code of meeting practice, together with the included prayer, would possibly allow that to be adopted and move forward.
Will that cover it off nicely?
Yeah, doesn't matter on there or minute, isn't it?
Yeah. Code of meeting practice, we need to have a resolution.
Yeah.
So you got that up?
If you include in option 2, Darren, to take out as presented and say adopt policy 1102, code of meeting practice, together with the inclusion of the prayer, and
the mover and the second of it, certainly the mover has indicated that's not the case, but you will need an amendment. Unless the mover
Well, I'll move.
is happy, well,
No.
so you would need an amendment. I'm happy to do so.
All right.
If you move it, we don't need it.
No, that's all right. Someone else can second it. I'll second it. The amendment. Councillor Trembars. All right, so the amendment now reads, we consider submissions during the public exhibition of draft policy code of meeting practice and adopt policy 1101, the code of meeting practice, together with inclusions of prayer in the order of business. Are you happy?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? 7-2.
Andrew's got his hand up.
And yeah, Andrew's got his hand up. Amendment passed 7-2. It now becomes the motion. I put the motion. All those in favour? And 7-2. In both cases, the nay votes were from Councillor Tucker and Councillor Gray. Okay, moving on. Hang on, what are we going to do now?
I'm just waiting for your.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now on to report for information. Monthly activity report for the General Manager. That report 1401 is received as information. Mover and second, please. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to remove that. I'm happy to remove the recommendation. I did have a little bit of a query with Aid for Human Resources. Did we lose a staff member there in April?
Situation one, yeah.
Through the chair, that was separated from one person.
Separated from their employment, yeah.
Through
So we got
the chair,
one.
yeah.
Okay, and I was happy to see the report on the Visitor Information Centre, and there seems to be a high increase of users visiting social media from the Facebook platform more so than from Instagram and Twitter now, which is really good to see. Anyway, I just think that's really good to see. And yeah, the community activity, and it was good to see Mr. G came out to Black Springs for his funding announcement, and yeah, happy to use that.
Councillor McCarthy. Nothing. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to ask a couple of questions. The first one was where did I say it? In relation to the insurance renewals, which is in page 83, obviously a lot of April's concerned with this. Has there been an increase in our premiums that we should know about, or has it still been finalised?
Through the chair, there is increases in our premiums, but not exorbitantly because of the way and the work that we've done to consolidate some of those things within our known risk areas. So, yeah, there is an increase, yes, but not exponential.
So it's more than 2.1% though, I presume?
Through the chair, it is more than 2.1%, yes.
So is it closer to 10 or 20?
Through the chair, it's something I'd be happy to discuss with you at the operational plan adoption, but it is, I can't give you the real figure because I don't know it off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. No, it's just as you know from a question I raised at one of the meetings that insurance has been an area of huge increase, and I just wanted to ensure that we adequately covered it. The other thing is I was interested in the meeting on page 89, I think it was, and maybe you could explain to us the meeting with Pollinate in relation to research project being conducted on behalf of Forestry Corporation. Who's pollinating who?
With what?
Through the chair, I was asked to be involved in an interview with an independent organisation looking into the operations of forest and how that they meet and the challenges that we have locally with that industry within our local government area. It was quite a good conversation and one that outlined a number of things that council has been well and truly across and made people aware of in terms of the challenges that we have, but also the recognition of the support and the business that forest is in our local government area.
Okay, so the organisation Pollinate has nothing to do with pollinating, it's to do with policy more, research.
Is research, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Couldn't pick that by the name, would you? Thank you, Councillor Trimmer. Councillor Kevin, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, both on page 83. First one, in relation to ARIC re-establishment, it says that expected to meet late April, early May, so clearly we're past that. Any ideas when that committee will get going again?
Through the chair, we're looking to have one in May in order to look at the financials and to run our existing ARIC through that. However, we're looking to do a complete overhaul given the guidelines that have now been presented by OLG and trying to establish a ARIC that meets the needs and the requirements of council, independent from the previous joint ARIC that we were associated with.
Yeah, so it's now late May, early June?
It'll be late May.
Okay, thank you. My other question is the final paragraph, land development. And I know this has come up before, but I'm still unclear about the process we're going about this in relation to both the residential and industrial development. So is the tender document that we're preparing, is that simply requesting prices to construct the civil works? So we engage a contractor to do the civil works and then we sell the blocks?
Correct.
So do we have a design for them to quote on or to tender on?
So through the chair, council resolved the design for the residential subdivision in March, I think it was, and the industrial subdivision has been identified and has an approval attached to the concept already.
Yes, that's the concept plans, but I presume it needs detailed designs of drainage and curb and gutter and services and everything.
So,
and I assume that would need to happen before we can call for tenders.
So through the chair, the industrial subdivision has all that. So we have that detail.
Right.
The residential one is being prepared. We're looking to prepare that before we go to tender.
Right. Thank you. That's the bit I wasn't clear about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'd just like to say a couple of things about the ARIC. The ARIC we'd been in previously, I won't say it was dysfunctional, but it wasn't as functional as it could have been. It had 3 independent members, all 2 mortgage accountants, which meant that everything was seen through an accounting lens, and that was not a good ARIC. You certainly need an accountant, you need a business analyst, and you need a risk analyst to give you the spread of expertise in the independent members, and that's what we're seeking. Also, there is still a little bit of a way to go. At one point, the Office of Local Government was saying there should not be elected members on the ARIC, which has been fought back fairly hard. And I don't think that's, I think that's being won that particular fight. So we'll hopefully end up with a diverse group of independent members and then elected members as the other two members on the ARIC.
Can I ask how the independent members are chosen?
Previously, they applied and actually the chair was appointed, and the chair and I remember sitting on the selection panel for the other independent members. So that was done by the elected members of the Go Council and Oberon Council.
And if it's now being re-established as just an ARIC for Oberon Council only?
It'll be probably through the joint organisation.
Mm-hmm.
So we may in fact still share an ARIC, simply because if you're going to have an ARIC that's got the skills, a mixed skills like that, you might as well have a few councillors using it.
Right, and just a passing comment, I know I was appointed simply as the alternative elected member to go on the ARIC, but I remember you saying that I could expect to be bored, and I do expect to be bored. However,
crushingly boring. Occasionally it can be deadly.
However, realising that, I'm still interested to attend the first meeting, even if I'm not required as an alternative, just to get the feel for how it works.
That's perfectly reasonable. Okay. You don't want to go into this thing cold. All right, I'm done. Anyone else for the General Manager's activity report? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And the motion's carried unanimously. All right, 1402, monthly activity report for the Planning and Development Director. The item recommendations report item 1402 is received as information. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Tucker. Councillor McCarthy.
It's a pretty good report. I'm glad to see number 4 column on the bottom of 91 and 92 is starting to get filled up with numbers, so it's better to the director. I also spoke to the director today, and he said that the barbecue down at the skate park's here. We still need a common working party. This varies a little bit from his report, because I think somewhere along at the skate park there's a fence to be installed along the dam there. I think it was originally, doesn't go anywhere, it's just a fence that goes east-west. But,
to delineate the.
I think it's to stop kids running out of the skate park into the dam.
Into the dam.
But so what we need is a common working party, and you might want to delete that. Anyway, I'm happy with the report from the director. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pember.
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, sorry, Tucker. Sorry, my writing was so bad, I got it wrong.
Nothing director, that was me.
Yeah. Any more? Councillor Hayden.
Well, I'm happy to see that report and the open off-leash dog park, and I'd like to see some signage in relation to that as well, because there's a fair few people that keep thinking we don't have an off-leash dog park, and they think they can just let their dogs off down at the common. So perhaps we need a bit of signage in the common to direct people towards that park. And and I'm happy with the rest of it.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too am happy to see that the table on 91 and 92 seems to be getting a bit smaller, and at least the December ones seem to have been mainly dealt with, and we're getting the numbers in January down, etc. So that's good to see, and the rest of the report. The only questions I'd have really are in relation to the waste facility. I thought that the telehandler was imminent for delivery and testing after the April meeting. So I'm a bit surprised that we still haven't tested it. And my second question is, are we also, or did we follow up the issue about trying to get a front end loader and I think I might have suggested that one of our panel companies had a front end loader to have. So I'll just fix that.
Through the chair.
Apologies about that. So I just wondering if I could ask that, and had we got any further with the mains power than where we were last time? Because Enercon were also investigating it at that period. So I was expecting something to have arisen this time, that we've got a way forward with that.
Through the chair, Councillor Kidman, I spoke to our plant supervisor actually today in regard to the telehandler, and it's my understanding it will be delivered, if not this week, early next week. We've just been waiting on the machinery to be available. We're also waiting on whether the machinery required a certain licence, and that's not the case. Our current operator is able to use that. So in terms of the front end loader, again, based on staff availability and the machinery, haven't progressed at this stage. Just go through the telehandler first, and then we'll engage the front end loader to then trial that as well. In terms of the energy or electrical supply, we've had some response back from one of the local neighbours. We're progressing that with Enercon, going to provided a quote for the design, so we're in the process of engaging Enercon to do that and moving forward.
Okay, so when do you think we will have completed our trials of the telehandler and the front end loader?
Through the chair, envisaged to have the telehandler for upwards of 6 weeks. So during that time, we'll engage the front end loader as well.
Okay.
We'll take that at the same time.
Apologies. I'm having trouble with my phone. Thank you.
Through the chair, we've also heard word that the Essential have also supported the underground processes that we're looking to implement, which is different from what they originally suggested. So the easement is much smaller and underground compared to the 20-metre one that was originally proposed. So that's good news, moving in the right direction.
You finished, Councillor McKibben?
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Watt?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask the Planning and Development Director what the implications are of declaring a dog a nuisance?
Through the chair, there are, I might have taken on notice to come back to, but there's certainly many variations. Certainly keeping dogs within cages, wearing certain collars, and obviously if they breach those, there's significant fines over and above what a normal non-dangerous dog would attract. I think that holds my head.
I'm aware of the implications of declaring a dog dangerous, but not of a nuisance. Look, it's only a minor matter, but it's, I mean, dogs can be a considerable annoyance in the community. So it's nice to know that you've got the ability to reduce that nuisance value.
Yeah. So through the chair, just to add to that, it's the companion animals provision that's allowed for a new, well, it's not a new category anymore, but it's relatively new, that deals with those matters that are purely nuisance based rather than a menacing or a dangerous
Barking
provision. Yeah, continually. That is generically what you would see, but once again, the investigation needs to be undertaken. It's not just this dog barks. So there is a process that needs to be undertaken through the companion animals provisions that will allow action to be taken by a council under that provision.
Thank you.
Any more?
I'll put the motion. The recommendation is that 1402 is received as information. All in favour? Motion's carried unanimously. 1403. Monthly activity report for technical services. Recommendation is that report item 1403 is received as information. Mover and secretary, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, it's a good report. I'm happy to move it. It's good to see the road works. I do have some concerns about the line marking going out to Barriga, which we've discussed at other meetings. Water and sewer, I'm pleased that the works are still in process of the cleaning of our mains. How through the mayor, can I ask how long we have until they are finalised?
Yeah, through the mayor, roughly another 2 weeks.
Another 2? Okay, so it's good to see that.
Make it a little bit over schedule.
Going through the mayor, certainly we've been set up originally as undertaken, and it does take a little bit more time to actually prepare the cleaning of the lines. So the program in itself, yeah, was always anticipated to be around a 4-week window. So we are on target.
Yep.
Again, subject to any other interruptions like weather or bits and pieces, but certainly at this stage, it definitely hasn't been an impact. So we are still on target for that window of this month.
Yep, and I'm pleased to see the O'Connell rec ground has an irrigation design being finalised and
Through the chair, yeah, certainly there is a conceptual design there now at this stage. And on the process now of putting that out to market to like a request for quotation to see what that will come back at in terms of pricing for further discussion and to inform that next stage processes.
yep, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
And Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm happy with the report. The only thing that's not listed here, we're going down the path of doing that drainage in the bottom of Dart Street, and I just need a clarification. We're actually running the line to each property, a big connection to their water, stormwater, in 3 locations, aren't we? So we're actually going to run the line underneath the footpath, aren't we?
Yeah, through the chair. So we will provide a connection junction to each individual pit for each block to connect to their downwater. Yes.
Thank you. And
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just asking, I'm having difficulty hearing the Technical Services Director. So if I repeat anything that's been said, I was just, in relation to the STP project, we're looking at the concept plan and documentation to go out with a request for tender for detailed design and construction, or detailed design? Just detailed design, is it?
Yeah, through the chair, certainly that's detailed design. Yes, correct.
Right. And we're aiming for that by the 30th of June, is that correct?
Again, through the chair, yes, that is the target date at this stage. Yes.
So do we have a revised timetable as when we're likely to go out to RFT for construction once we have the detailed design?
Again, through the chair, subject to that design determination, then we'll have a revised timetable that which will then better inform what that tendering timeframe will look like. So I don't actually have that at this stage.
Well, aren't we currently paying interest on a loan for $3 million that we're not utilising?
Again, yes, that is true. So the process, as indicated, is moving forward as quick as it can. Again, with those further discussions with state government, just to finalise the agreements and concurrence that both parties are, in agreement with that final design. So it's taking place.
But this has slipped considerably because we took out the loan on the basis that this was moving ahead, and it's slipping behind. By the time we actually go out and issue the RFT for construction, if we're issuing the RFT for detailed design at the end of June, we won't be issuing an RFT for construction, I'm assuming, because we have to do the detailed design, then provide it to the potential tenderers for the construction. We're looking at March next year.
No, that's not true, through the chair. Look, basically the design is at a process where it just needs to be clarified with the state government counterparts, and then from there, I believe we're at a process, then we can go straight to going to tender. So that's the position we're at, and I do take your points of concern on board. But,
so again, as we've said, and I thought what's coming out from the last meeting, the 12th of April, we're going to get a revised timetable.
Look, again, through the chair, I'll provide that revised timetable following that meeting with the state government.
Because the further this pushes out, the more expensive it's going to get at the way rate. And I'm concerned that, we need to get this moving. I mean, as I've indicated before, there was delegations given to the general manager in case this situation arose during the election December last year. Well, we're not even up to where we anticipated being in December last year at the moment. So I think a detailed timetable needs to be circulated.
So, yeah, it looks noted. Information is noted. I'll provide that information as soon as I have it.
The other thing, and it may be more relevant to grants, but as I understand it, that we may have money remaining from our Campbell's River and Burriga Road projects, and that we may be able to, and do we have to get consent if that's to be allocated to the Arkstone Road from the government?
Yeah, through the mayor, certainly the full allocation for Campbell's River Road will be exhausted. There, at this stage, we're working with Transport for New South Wales with regard to any surplus and have requested what that may look like in terms of carrying that into round 3 for Arkstone Road. At this stage, indications are favourable to be able to do that. It's a work in progress, so we're looking at this stage and how we can do that, because it's both federally and state funded funds. But in principle, it's doable.
Okay, and obviously there were some comments made at the Burriga operational plan meeting the other night in relation to some issues on the Burriga Road. I don't know if you were there, Technical Services Director, but some residents did raise a couple of issues. Have you been made aware of those?
Yeah, through the chair. Look, certainly I've had a look at one of the issues raised here this evening by Councillor Hayden with regard to the line marking, and have instructed some modifications to be made to sections of that road. Whilst there is still our line marking contractors in this area doing a number of roads, those changes will be made.
Also,
I think you're frozen, Andrew.
Just wait.
Let's see if we're getting back. I know that's one. See if we're getting back.
Might have frozen because he owes us 2 slabs.
All right, what we'll do is we'll leave Councillor McKibben there. We're getting back, that's good. Is there anyone else? You there, Andrew?
yes, I'm sorry. The other area was the bridge near Lanakuri entrance.
Councillor McKibben, can you say that again? You broke up.
Sorry. The other area was the bridge just near the Lanakuri,
Re-entrance.
I think was raised as an issue by a couple of Burriga residents, and the ascent on the Gilman Dyke side of Mount Lawson, where there's a change in level in the pavement.
Look, through the chairs, I'll take those on notice. Look, I'm not acutely aware, but I will follow those notes up from that meeting. I wasn't there, unfortunately, but I will follow that up.
And my apologies, I should have raised with you this afternoon when I met you at the gate, but I forgot about them. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else for technical services? All right, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion passed unanimously. And 1404, monthly activity report for corporate services. And the recommendation is that report item 1404 is received with information. Move in a second, please. Councillor Tucker, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no comments. Nothing to remember.
There's a report, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion is passed unanimously. 1405, statement of investments. The recommendation is the council receive report item 1405 as information. Moving to second to Councillor Hayden and Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the report. It's basically just a rundown on investments for council.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's nice to see that as a result of interest rates moving up slightly, we're obtaining a bit better rate of return on our money in the bank. So I'm pleased to move the second the recommendation.
Else? Put the motion. All in favour? Passed unanimously. 1406, grants monthly update. And the recommendation is the report is received as information. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, nice to see. Basically, just information on our grants, processes, etc.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, look, it's good to see, and it's obviously the 8th of February 2022 submission for the Building Better Regions Fund R6. It'd be nice to know if when we could get a response before that. If it's sooner than later, that would be good. I just have a question, if I could, and I probably should have raised it on the technical services report. The Technical Services Director and I, as was raised at the Barriga meeting, have we got a solution for that? And should we be looking at a grant fund for the solution?
Andrew, you just dropped out for about 25 seconds, and that's getting quite common at the moment. So can you?
Rightio. Sorry, you will recall it when we went to the Arkstone Road where the Isabella River was, Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. So should we be looking at fundings, and have we approached Mr. Borg about that?
Through the chair, certainly it's a work in progress with regard to Borg. Yes, we have approached them with some conceptual route potential. Look, again, I have no response from them in relation to that, nor do I have any funding stream which would be considered, which would be quite a large sum of money to redivert a road, which would be in the magnitude of 900 to a kilometre in length across that Edmund Vale Bridge. So at this stage, it's still discussions with Borg and their position being obtained.
Through the
Okay.
chair. To add to that, I contacted the owner directly, and they give us a name of someone who is more than happy to meet our guys on site to discuss
a change in locality for a potential road, and
Yes.
they seem to be positive in the way that their initial correspondence back to me was, in terms of that scenario of moving the road reserve. So
Right.
they are keen to work with us in this instance, which is pleasing. However, noting the technical services director's comment about no funding source, and we haven't really had a good look at what that is. It'll be something the council needs to consider in the future.
So would it be possible, if we're over with one of our grants, for any of that to be contributed? I don't know. It probably wouldn't be enough, but would it go to a contribution?
Through the chair, I think that's something we just have to take on notice. It depends on what the funding's for. Some funding is about upgrading of existing roads, some is for new roads, some is, I don't necessarily know whether the relocation of a road is something. We'll be looking at all our options in that regard once we have an understanding whether the landowner is happy to proceed with a road realignment or a road reserve, whatever that looks like. We'll just have to come back to you, councillor.
All right. Thank you. Thanks very much.
You any more?
I'm happy to move this the report be move it as a seconder. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Oh,
It's just with the road that Andrew spoke about, the alternative. Could we be not contacting Mr. Faraway and see if we can get an on-site meeting and show him how urgent this is, and it needs a state fund, be state funded. Yeah.
was the go.
I think that's a really good idea.
Get him out there. Yep. We'll see what we can do. Fine.
Take him down 5 Trail 13 as well. I'll be down.
I don't even want to know about it. All right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Item 1407, sewer and water plant. Recommendations, the report 1407 is received as information. Moving second, please. Councillor Hayden and Councillor Tucker. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation of the report. I do have a couple of queries. And it's relating to our sewage treatment plant and how much water it should be, would be, or could be handling. Who are our largest volume users? Are the factories putting off a lot of water into our sewage treatment plant? How is it affected by surfactants and bioorganics and all of that that's going down from businesses in town?
Yeah, through the chair, the liquid trade waste is what I think you're referencing to in terms of limits and parameters. Certainly, if and when they are discharging, they need to meet certain criteria and benchmarks. At the minute, some of the larger industry is not discharging for that very fact. They don't actually have a trade waste license and are treating a lot of their stuff on site by differing systems that they have internally as part of their business units, as in water reuse and the like. So it's not something that is being discharged at this current time to our current plant.
What about other businesses and commercial premises that have large water uses of say 150,000 litres a week? Is that having any impact on our sewage treatment plant?
Depending on the purpose of the actual business and the premise, commercial and or industrial, certainly they are governed again under the liquid trade waste compliance regulation. No, there is no known impact from any other business alike. Doesn't matter in volume. Again, it's really the content within the actual water that would have any
evidence to impact on the treatment process, which there is none at this stage.
Councillor Tucker,
No comments or questions, Mr Mayor.
anyone else? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'm not going to break until we're done tonight. Should be not very long. All right, 1408, the monthly update on the status of council resolutions. That report item 1408 is received information. Mover and second, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Trembus.
There's
Councillor Hayden, sorry. I'll scribble.
yeah, happy to move the report. The water treatment plant replacement of membrane bioreactor filters. It says, mentioning there about a tender release during June. So that's, I gather that's for June, but then there's some mention here of February. I've just noted that and I'm rambling, so don't worry about it. Okay. The Bogga Bogga Road, has that one been done, that realignment?
Through the chair, that's yes, it was anticipated for the surveyor, Warman Ratset, to come in and do that survey. Again, I made an inquiry here just last week, and there has been a delay in them coming to undertake that survey, unfortunately, given the backlog of work that they have. However, they have said that they will be here, I'd say next week. They did give me an indication of about a fortnight. So as part of that process, then there is a design to be done following that survey in terms of concept to move that realignment forward into the future.
Now, with the proposed heating and independent living units, I noticed that it says here that work was to commence in May. Has anything further been done with the heating? Because I suppose they'd like to have that one before winter kicks in for.
Yeah.
Corporate Tourism?
Yes, through the chair. The contractors are just going to the last rounds of the induction WA test, so we're anticipating they are likely, hopefully, are on site by next week.
Thank you.
Councillor Trembus.
Thank you. I think Councillor Hayden has put up a few things. That Bogga Bogga Road, that's just a priority road, isn't it? Was that a priority road?
Through the chair, no, it's not. It was a notice of motion Councillor McCarthy raised in relation to a bad bend on the road. Request to review that in terms of straightening realigning the road to a better curvature.
No, I think.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to ask the Oberon Sports Complex, and I have had trouble hearing the last couple of speakers, Oberon Sports Complex update on ongoing progress. So does this mean that the additional information that's been provided they will consider it in June? Do we expect their report in June, or will it be later than June?
Through the chair.
Or is the JRPP determination to come to council at the June meeting? That's the halfway down page 116.
Through the chair, the assessment and finalisation will occur at that time.
Right. So they've indicated it'll take that long.
And through the chair, that is when they've been programmed to come to Oberon to undertake the assessment.
Right. And page 118, the last item, the planning agreement with the applicant. That seems to have been pending for some time. I know we had a lot of discussion about this and the legalities of it, if I can use that word, and where we got to. But the agreement still hasn't been signed by the applicant, indicating any agreement to anything.
Planning Director.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Through the chair, I had contacted the applicant or the owner late last week, inquiring as to when that would be returned to council. The indication was within the next 2 weeks, so I'm expecting it either later this week or early next week, Councillor.
So if they don't return the planning agreement and if they don't sign it, because of the way that because the resolution, basically they could proceed without signing it at all, couldn't they?
Through the chair, there is an option should a interim occupation certificate be provided to the landowners at that time, but as part of that process, council look at the conditions of consent and make sure they've been met. So it's in the applicant's best interest to undertake the planning agreement as presented and as resolved.
Okay, but they can modify what's been put to them, but they have to sign something. Is that the concept?
Through the chair, the planning agreement, my understanding is, has been prepared, has been looked at. It's purely a matter of them providing it back to us signed so we can put the agreement to bed.
Okay. Right, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. Page 116, the third item, business space aimed at 34 Flinders Avenue. I'm just wanting to understand what's happening there. I assume that's the vacant block up the top end of Flinders Avenue up near Taranaki Crescent. So we are preparing a DA for a dual occupancy on that. So is the intention that we then sell the land with a DA approval, or are we going to develop the dual occupancy ourselves, or what's the plan?
So through the chair, the resolution of council is to look at options to develop and keep units on that land. Potentially, if it's strata and you sell one, you keep one, or whatever that process is, will be a determination of council. But at this point in time, it wasn't to sell, it was to develop ourselves.
To develop and own the land and do what we choose to with the dual occupancy units.
That is correct.
All right.
One of the issues that was raised is the potential to have professional staff and keeping them involved. And one of the comments made by council was that you could rent one out and keep one for those types of purposes. Should that be applicable at this time? So
right.
that's good.
Thank you. And again, it's going back before my time, so I wasn't familiar with it. And also just wondering, was there any issue with that effectively being parkland, like operational or community land, and has that been overcome, or is that still to be done?
So there is some constraints, but ultimately with community land you can't sell. You can license, lease or develop, but you can't sell. And council has no anticipation, at this point in time, it's not anticipated that that's to be sold. So
it is still community land, but we are permitted to develop it in this way as community land.
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you.
The same as what you would with a park or with a toilet or something like that, yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Any more? I'll put them open. All in favour? Passed unanimously. Okay. We have the item 1409, O'Connell Recreation Ground Stage 1 funding allocation and project budget. And the recommendations of 1409 have received this information. So move in seconder. Councillor Pemba and Councillor Watt. Councillor Pemba.
Thank you, and thank you for the spreadsheet, Gary, with the milestones sort of outlined for us. But the one thing that I'd probably say is, can we sort of progress this a bit further and get with some dates around? I realise you're waiting on the irrigation plan and those sort of things, but once we get to that point, when we start to sort of, there's a lot of questions in the community as to when they'll be able to use it, of course, because they can sort of time see that grass growing. not the real graph that we plan to put down, but yeah, that I think is one of the things that's really key, sort of, because there is no way to hold any events now, it's the pub closure. Needs to utilise part of the back area, in particular for the future of the festival. So there's really sort of like a lot of emphasis on when would that be available to be used as community space.
So through the chair, firstly, apologies for not providing that document. It was the big part that council was asked for some information on. The second thing is that you will find that spreadsheet has been provided to councils on the basis of that is how the funding was originally asked for from the authorities. You'll note that now that we have a master plan for that area, there are some of the components within that schedule that will need to be considered by council to further develop, like the fencing that we would originally asked for is no longer, so that gives us an opportunity to potentially look at other things within the confines of stage one of that development opportunity. I must stress, however, is that because they are funded separately, we can't just ask for a new thing under an amendment to any grantee. It'd have to be something similar to what we're looking at. So those sort of things are things that I'll just raise, but it was the opportunity to provide councils with an overview as requested as to what were the bits that we had funded. That gives that overview. Take the point. Now can we start looking at grouping those together as to how that is? There is a number of requests for quotes that we have out for different types of irrigation, and that will need to be considered by council when they come back.
Councillor White,
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
any more for this one? Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, spoken with the manager, we need to look at getting the bore and the standpipe reinstated to operational use. People in the existing location, but we were given a grant to provide that facility for the community and we've taken it away. We could end up with a dry summer, so we need to be working towards that.
Technical services.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, in relation to the quotations being sought now with the irrigation design that's been completed by Total Irrigation Design, is also the component around the relocation of the bore as originally requested by council to relocate that to the Beaconsfield Road entrance. So it's a two-part request for quotes. One in isolation of the sporting field, so we can better understand and present to council what those costs may be. So once those are known, I can bring that back to council and talk in more detail of those costs, potentially around if council wishes to proceed and what that may look like in terms of that cost in isolation.
You have a comment?
Just want the thing usable again, that's all.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is passed unanimously. I've done that. Not urgent. There is no urgent business.
Right.
Right. So, in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government General Regulations 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following businesses are in kind as referred to in section 10A2 of the Act and should be dealt with in the part of the meeting closed to the media and public. So those who are joining us on Zoom, you will be excluded from the meeting as of now, and there are no members in the gallery. Thank you and good night for the time being. I'll now get councillors to move us into, mover and a second move us into confidential. Councillor Hayden and Councillor Graham, all in favour? Passed.
Did we not just,
No, we've moved that one forward, right to the very front, remember?
my sleepless conversation.
You might have been, Nick, I don't know. A few other yes got moved to the very front so Zoe could finish off.
Yeah, I know that.
Stop recording.
Don't we have to move that the meeting goes back to normal?
Yeah, I'll move it now. I move that we go back into open session. I will move in a seconder. Councillor Trembath, sorry, Councillor Hayden and Councillor Tucker. All in favour?
Aye.
Unanimous. The following resolutions were made during the section of the meeting that was closed to the public. There were no members of the public present at the time. Item 1601, a water write-off request for account 123-60614. And the resolution was the council does not write off excess water for assessment 123-60614, but instead offer a payment plan arrangement for full cost recovery. Item 1602, property and land development, a land purchase in Norway. The council support the recommendations highlighted within the report. And item 1603, electricity procurement. The council resolved that council note the extreme and unprecedented volatility of the electricity market currently being experienced and replace the previous resolution from council, the council report of 15th of June 2021, resolution number 26150621. Contribute a minimum of 50% of council's electricity load to a renewable energy power purchase agreement where the pricing is lower than the existing contracted price. Replace that with contribute a minimum 50% of council electricity load to a renewable energy power purchase agreement and receive a report on completion of the procurement process. The next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Tuesday, the 21st of June 2022, commencing at 5:30 in the Oberon Council Chambers, 137 to 139 Oberon Street, Oberon.